This is how I made learning way easier. I made a tool that can be used from anywhere to create books, audiobooks, turn notes into audio, a way to review the information learned and get feedback, and even a glossary that can be projected onto the wall. So how does it work? Let's run through an example. Say you want to learn how to make a biotech trading bot as a retail trader, something I'm currently doing. And for this example, we'll say you want to make a book, although you could make an audiobook too. You type in the thing you want to learn into the table, change the status to in progress, and wait until it changes to done. You check your Google Drive, and voila, you have the book. Simple, right? You can do the same for the audiobook and it'll appear in your Google Drive. Now you're done learning and you want to get feedback and correction on what you've learned. You do this by writing about everything you remember and learned in here. You change the status to in progress and wait, and this time the feedback appears on your Notion page. It gives you a score for your retention, understanding, and technical precision. It tells you what you missed and even creates an analogy to help with your learning. The difficult or technical words and any root words or affixes get automatically added into your glossary and ready to be turned into slides and projected onto your wall for further recall. That is essentially the learning system. It does the same with audiobooks you generate or notes you've turned into audio. So why did I make this? I did this because I wanted to reduce the time I spent searching for information. I wanted to spend no time listening to waffle or reading fluff, or sitting through introductions or anything that wasn't part of the thing I was trying to learn. So motivated by my desire for efficiency and automation, I built this tool which I call the learning system. A tool I believe I'll use for the rest of my life. Now, if you're interested in the plumbing and how everything fits together, continue watching, or else skip to the chapter on the screen. So how does it work behind the scenes? Now, this part is a little technical, but stay with me. When you type in the thing you want to learn and change the status to in progress, Notion creates a JSON file of the thing you want to learn about and sends that to the address that is set up in automation. Think of it like mailing a letter to a friend. The letter is the thing you want to learn, and the postman is Notion, the middleman, and the address is the webhook, the URL you have set it to. Normally, your home Wi-Fi router acts like a brick wall. It blocks random internet traffic from reaching your personal devices for security reasons. This is where ngrok comes in. Ngrok basically drills a secure temporary tunnel straight through that brick wall, so any information that is sent to that public address is received, effectively bypassing that router feature. There is a security risk here, but don't worry, we have a defense set up for it. It's called Notion Signature Confirmation. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, once ngrok gets the webhook, it shoots it down the tunnel directly into your local computer. ngrok then forwards that package to a specific port on your machine. In my case, it's port 5000. Ports are just specific destinations in your computer. Say you mailed a letter to a friend who lives in an apartment. The port in this case would be his apartment number, while the address would be the building. Now the JSON file is sitting at port 5000. This is where we use Flask, a Python library that acts like a listener for traffic that ngrok drops off, and sends it to the designated location, depending on its end route. Here is what I mean by end route. Different webhooks and in different strings. In this case, it's read, audio, review. This is how the tool knows which files to use. These files are scripts. Scripts are just files made up of code. Code is just instructions for a computer. If the request is accepted because it has the correct Notion signature confirmation, it moves to the server.py, where it is directed to the route specified in its webhook. If we return to our example of the book, this would end in read and be sent through the learn.py file and eventually uploaded to both the computer and the cloud. To the computer to act as a reference file for what AI will compare your review to, and onto the cloud so you can access it from anywhere. Last of all, after the review, the technical words are automatically sent into the glossary database, and once you change the status to in progress, it shoots a new request to the server, which this time generates a slide that is put into the folder /data/slides, letting you take them from that folder, put them onto a USB, and project them onto the wall. Now, let's talk about the actual code. Here is the file layout. I'm going to go over what each file's main purpose is and share some of the crucial functions inside them. But before that, let me clarify, I did use AI to create this code. Without AI, I'm someone who wouldn't be able to build a tool like this without significant time, dedication, and informational resources. While I've noticed many developers look down upon AI code, well, maybe not the code itself, but the creator's ignorance of how it works, when I generate code, and before deploying it, I take the time to understand it, question it, and be prepared to be able to maintain it and upgrade that code over time if I believe it's something I'll use for a long time. Anyway, back to the layout. The folder/data is the local storage for all generated audio, text, and flashcard outputs. It's where you get the slides to put into a USB, plug into a projector, and display onto the wall. It's also where all the files that the code sends to the AI to use for comparison between your recall and the actual content is. .env stores sensitive API keys and database IDs for the system's authentication, things like your Notion's database ID, Google Drive ID, credentials for Google Drive, and AI API keys. The next file is infrastructure.yaml. It's the master configuration for all directory paths and system files. This is where the code looks to see where files are. Server.py is a Flask API that manages and queues all automation jobs. It's like a receptionist that gets a request from ngrok, finds out where the request should go, and directs it to the correct files. Notion_ops.py is short for Notion Operations. It handles all reading, writing, and status updates within Notion. Remember how once our bot was done generating, it changed the status to done? Well, that's Notion_ops.py. Learn.py generates a deep dive script and converts them into audiobooks. Read.py creates a long-form reading document with automated tables of contents. Audio.py converts existing Notion notes or text generated into MP3s using a reference voice. Review.py compares notes to a source text to provide feedback and extract terms. Slide_generator.python creates high contrast glossary flashcards as PNG images. Local_text-to-speech.python runs the CoQI X text-to-speech engine to generate natural speech locally. Drive_ops.py automates the uploading of files to specific Google Drive folders. Requirements.txt is just a list of the Python libraries required to run the environment. I'm just going to speed through the last couple. Reference.wave is just the audio sample used for text-to-speech. Credentials.json is the Google Cloud's credentials for initial API authorization. Token.json is just the saved access token for the Google Drive integration. .gitignore prevents sensitive or temporary files from being synced to GitHub. GitHub is just the repo for code. The folder VNV is short for virtual environment. It's an isolated environment containing all project-specific dependencies. The folder Python cache is the compiled Python files stored to improve execution speed. The .git folder is a hidden folder which tracks all the code and the version history and changes. It makes it so that if you mess up the code once, you can go back in time to when the code was correct and work from there. Okay, that was the files and their individual purposes. Now, let's go over some core functions inside them. Inside config.yaml, there is a loop count for both audiobook and text. This determines how long the information will be. The prompts underneath are how the information will be structured. The loop prompt is used to make it simpler to go more into depth about the thing that you want to learn about. For limitation testing, I tried 100 loops, and let's just say after about 20 loops, the AI generation starts to go off and it starts generating irrelevant information. So my recommendation is to just keep these settings. Python, there is run safe worker. This is the gatekeeper that prevents system crashes by forcing jobs to run one at a time. This ensures that if a lot of requests are sent, they are queued up instead of occurring concurrently. As you can see, the secret sauce is the with job lock statement. Think of this like a bouncer at a one in, one out club. It takes whatever heavy task needs doing, target function, and checks the door. If the job is already running, the lock stays closed, and new requests are safely queued up in the background instead of occurring simultaneously. This prevents the system from trying to run multiple intense AI text-to-speech generations at once, saving your hardware from crashing and using your computer's resources highly efficiently. Inside Notion_operations Python, I believe Notion request is a crucial function. It's a core bridge that allows every other script to read from and write to the Notion workspace. It's a function from the Notion library. Inside local text-to-speech Python, there is a generate local audio, the engine that turns text into speech using the reference voice, and it also manages the GPU memory. That function is too long to fit into just a single image, so here's two. Inside review Python, the function run review grading is the brain that uses Gemini to analyze the notes you wrote down and find gaps in your knowledge. The prompt is set in config.yaml, and if you'd like, you can change them. Inside learn Python and read Python, there is a chat send_message. It's the primary interaction with Gemini that generates the deep dive study content for both audiobooks and books. Here are the last two functions, which I believe are crucial. Inside Drive Operations Python, there is upload to Drive, which is the final step that saves generated assets to the cloud, Google Drive, for mobile access. And last of all, there is add glossary term to database inside of Notion Operations Python, which automatically builds your personal dictionary by extracting new concepts from your studies. Remember the security risk I was talking about with ngrok? How it drills a hole through the brick wall and exposes an address to the internet? Well, we prevent random requests by having it use Notion signature confirmation, meaning any time a request is sent, it must have a specific string of code from Notion in order to be accepted by our server, or else it's rejected. That string is inside .env under the name Notion token. This is known as an obscurity security defense. The code is so long and random that guessing it is beyond inefficient. So that's the security. You have 1, the webhook URL, and 2, the Notion signature confirmation. Okay, let's go over the cost of running this. AI, API, and electricity are the only costs with using this bot. For me, electricity comes to $12 AUD a month to keep my computer on 24/7. For my American viewers, that's roughly $7. And for AI API costs, that depends on how much I generate, but usually it's $5, which is around 100 books with 10 generation loops in them. That is around, I believe, $3 American. So how has my learning life changed since using the learning system? I went from listening to playlists to literally creating my own. If I wanted to learn about every boom and bust in the stock market, instead of trying to find an informational resource online, I would make my own. I would cue my bot before going to sleep, and by morning, I would have audiobooks about the tulip mania, the Great Depression of 1929, and the dot-com bubble to listen to on the way to work. The versatility of AI and this bot let me learn about biotech, medication, and how it's made and legalized, the phases that they have to pass in order to be approved, the basics of oncology, gene therapy, and much more. I went from being unsure of medical words to breaking them down using affixes and suffixes. I've learned about hardware and software, coding, and much more. I'm just a lifelong learner who has made it easier for himself to learn, review, and retain without the unnecessary pass. The link to the learning system is in the description. I'm aware some of my audience doesn't know how to use GitHub. I'll add instructions into GitHub, and beyond that, I might make a video of how to install and run the application start to finish, if I see that there is interest in this bot. If you're watching this 3 months from when the video is uploaded, chances are the video of how to install it will appear at the end. I love creating bots, automation systems, and coding. I have some other ones I'll showcase in future videos, like a YouTube automation bot, a biotech trading bot, a daily newsletter, an automatic job applying bot, and I'm making even more. Don't forget to follow me on my socials, like, comment, and subscribe. Anyways, stay sharp, stay curious, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one.